This is the Shanghai megaport, a new trade hub that could transform Peru's fortunes and radically change the lives of the people living in and around this sleepy fishing port. After 5 years of construction by a consortium led by Chinese state-owned conglomerate COSCO Shipping, it's beginning to take shape. With little time to go before the inauguration, construction here has continued apace. Behind me you can see some of the 27 new automated cranes installed in 4 terminals here at the port, which its backers say will be the new hub for trade between South America and Asia. Once up and running, these 4 terminals will be a people-free zone. The idea is that these fully automated cranes will be directed from a control room. The port could represent a technological leap for Peru.
This port can generate many growth opportunities from connectivity, from railroads, from the industry. Many industries and logistic companies want to position themselves here because this is going to be the center, logistics hub of South America.
The port on the Pacific coast will be the first in the region to have the capacity to dock some of the world's biggest cargo ships. Part of the Belt and Road Initiative, this colossal project is so ambitious that it's expected to dominate maritime traffic along the Pacific coast of South America. The biggest selling point is that those new routes will shave days, even weeks, of transit times across the ocean. By slashing transit times by 10 to 12 days, the Chancay multi-purpose port terminal will cut costs and make Peruvian products, from textiles to minerals to fruit and vegetables, more competitive. But it's Peruvian farmers, especially those in nearby Huaral Valley, who could benefit most.
Huaral es capital de la agricultura en el Perú.
Huaral is the capital of agriculture in Peru. We have almost 80% of all fruit and vegetable products. We have pitayayas, avocados, vegetables like lettuce, among other things. So, the fact that the transportation would take less time gives us the opportunity to do packing at less cost. That is a huge advantage for us.
Back in Chancay, however, there is uncertainty about the port and what it means for the small town.
It offers a direct route for commodities like timber, soy, and beef to reach Asian economies, bypassing the politically sensitive Panama Canal. However, this convenience comes with a heavy environmental price. Environmental experts warn that the port's faster connection to Asia will accelerate the destruction of the Amazon.
COSCO Shipping is also part owner in numerous terminals across Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and the Americas. COSCO says it intends for Chancay to be a major transport hub that will connect China to Peru and the rest of Latin America.
Esto puede operar, ha tenido que modificar toda la zona marino-costera. Y esa zona marino-costera estuvo destinada principalmente a sostener la actividad pesquera artesanal, ¿no?
Alejandro Chirinos leads environmental nonprofit Cooperación.
Todo eso ha sido removido. La remoción de los fondos marinos ha implicado pues devastar la zona donde los peces se encontraban en su espacio natural de reproducción, ¿no?
Of all infrastructure projects, ports have the biggest impact risk to its surrounding environment. More than roads, oil refineries, airports, power plants, and railways. But can a port exist in a way that isn't detrimental to the environment or local communities? That's a question that many in the sector are trying to answer. But here on this 40-kilometer-long stretch of seaport, several green initiatives are underway.
The industrial area.
These pipes, for example, will bring carbon emissions captured from the port into a storage area, a depleted gas field, under the North Sea. This site will soon be a plant for green hydrogen, which is made from clean energy. Every industry is looking at ways it can make its future more sustainable, but ports themselves are on the literal frontier of extreme weather events induced by climate change. So, as the gates to global trade, the catalyst to economic growth and development, it seems critical that ports are developed not only to withstand climate change, but not to feed it as well.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Environmental Coffee House. Hi, Tony.
Hey, good morning.
This topic today is something that, I've been interested in, and a lot of people are. especially after the disaster that COP was. But this has been going on for a long time with the Belt and Road Initiative, this Costco port in Peru, linked in China, and it's supposed to really increase the commodity exports of timber and soy and minerals, mostly minerals, because that's a big thing from South America. And it's going to have new roads and railways and waterways into the Amazon. And that's where, our fear is deforestation and fragmenting habitats and disrupting ecosystems and all kinds of things. And so I wanted to talk about that today, and also talk about how the people feel about it, because there's a lot of issues that come up with this, for the Peruvian people. So I'm going to say good morning to you, and here we are.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And this port, which is being deemed a super massive port, is going to be able to have a throughput at over 1 million containers a year. And this is just the current plan. There's likely to be also expansions. But you're exactly right in terms of environmental concern with this port and for the Amazon, the people of Peru. But it actually goes well beyond just the port itself. Of course, we're going to focus on the direct impacts of the port. But anytime that you have a port area like this, in any area, what happens is they become mega metropolitan areas, because the first wave that happens is workers want to be close to where the work is. And so after construction, you have these ports, these containers. A lot of it is going to be automated. This is supposed to be a super high-tech, futuristic port too, which is very interesting. But anyhow, so what's likely to happen, I mean, look at the largest ports in the world already in the Western Hemisphere: Port of Los Angeles, Port of New York, Port Shanghai. I mean, these are huge, robust metropolitan areas. And so it's likely that we're going to see expansion not only of commercialization, not only of production and manufacturing of those resources in the Amazon, but just also urban development as well. So you're absolutely right. And there will be a network of spider web roads leading across to this port. So it's not just the port itself. It's not just the damage that they're doing to the coastline. And I don't know how many people have actually been anywhere in Latin America and South America, but if you go to these countries, I've spent a lot of time in Mexico, I've spent a lot of time in El Salvador, and if you go to these countries, they have absolutely beautiful and pristine coastlines, and you don't really find that in the United States, because most of our coastlines are just beaches, with hotels and stuff like that.
Hotels.
So it's a very different kind of experience, at least for me. I haven't really been to too many American beaches. There are some even here in North Carolina that aren't developed, but most of our beaches are very developed. And in Latin America, you can find a lot of areas where you have very undeveloped coastlines. And so imagine this massive port coming in, and this is going to be a megaplex, right? This is not just some small area. This is going to be over, larger than a football stadium, multiple football stadiums. And yeah, and these ships, people don't understand these ships. I spent a lot of time in Los Angeles. These ships, when you see them on the sea, are fantastic in their size. I mean, really, you have to see them to get, maybe if you've been on a cruise, but these things are oftentimes bigger than cruise ships. I mean, these things are just massive. And then when they're fully loaded with all of their containers, they just look like titans, skyscrapers laying on the ocean surface. And the amount of pollution that these things traffic in, we saw with the COVID how much clearer the air was in Los Angeles. And then we had the problem because then they started backing up at the Los Angeles port, and the air quality went down quick. So this is a big problem too. Also, the demand now for shipping, this is going to increase shipping demands. We're going to need at least 800, or excuse me, 80 to 150 more ships to move these containers. And again, these are massive, massive, massive ships. We've already seen across, specifically in the South Asian Pacific, what happens when we see so many container ships moving along these corridors, that they create a line of soot in the atmosphere that's actually detectable. And it's like a hyper trail line of global dimming where you have these
Yeah.
shipping lanes. And you saw that on the Earth Null School project, and you can still go to the Earth Null School project and see those shipping lanes. And so now we're going to see those shipping lanes converge, triangulate here on Peru. So there's a whole host of environmental challenges and dangers that come along with the building of this megastructure. And it's very enticing for the people of Peru, or a lot of, well, we'll talk about that too. But for some people, it's very enticing because, like you say, there's opportunities to make a lot of money off of reaping the resources of the Amazon.
Absolutely. It's also happening. Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted
No,
to.
go ahead.
One thing I also saw in the news that China is now mega fishing right off the Peruvian coast. Mega fishing. They are decimating the Peruvian coast. And so, this is happening everywhere. I mean, the decimation of the penguins, 60,000 dead up in the Arctic, or was it Antarctic, because of overfishing that. So, I mean, it's just one thing after another. But mainly people, Antonio, most people don't think about all this.
No, our species is very disconnected from nature. And our economy has us geared in the exact opposite direction from biodiversity, from the global bioecology. And we see our ecology, we see our biosphere as cha-ching signs, as money.
There you go.
And so this view, though it's historical, remember when the Europeans had first arrived on the American shores and they saw pristine forests, and they saw wilderness all about, they understood that as the devil's domain, and that it was their job, their spirit, their destiny to conquer the wilderness. And that really is the spirit of modernity. That is the spirit of industrial civilization, is to conquer the untamed wilderness. And this is what that looks like. It looks like overfishing the seas. It looks like building megaports in some of the most beautiful, pristine, ecologically significant places in the world. It looks like ripping through the Amazon to chase after rare earth elements. And it looks like ignoring the fact that there are still so many untold and unfound species in the Amazon. And many of them, of course, are disappearing before we can even find them. And this will continue. This will continue to happen. And it's going to continue to happen at an accelerated rate because, like I say, it's so profitable now for this to happen. And China is completely changing international trade. And one of the ways to do this is move away from the infrastructure of the last century that the United States largely put together, like the Panama Canal, as we all know in Latin America.
Canal,
And that itself was an environmental travesty. But now it's the Chinese turn. And they're doing these type of mega projects all over the world. And sometimes these projects are in very environmentally sensitive areas. But they get the go-ahead from governments because they see that there's such a big economic opportunity. The amount of taxes that they can generate on over 1 million containers is going to be absolutely fantastic for their governments. And so they really do see this in terms of a possibility of a revenue stream. And so the likelihood of it actually going through is increased because of that. It is going to go through. It is still done
it's
now.
Going through. It's built.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
And their rail lines are coming in and all kinds of things. I have all these.
Yeah, it's a sealed deal, and like I said, all of the peripheral and infrastructure is necessary to maintain a port like that. The build out of urban centers around the port, processing centers, manufacturing centers, all of that's going to be right there, and it's going to continue to span, and it's going to completely eviscerate a lot of the Amazon forest, and it's going to continue not just the physical destruction, but the leaking of chemicals into the local waterways, all of the sort of environmental catastrophes, disasters that we see related to industrialism here in the United States and elsewhere in the world, we're going to see localized there too. And so think about oil spills, okay? Think about, running pipelines and all the sorts of infrastructure through these sensitive areas. And then when there are accidents, either in the transportation of these materials to the ports or what have you, they're going to be right in the most sensitive environmentally areas in the world. So this is a recipe for disaster, I think.
It's very sad. And, I think that, well, the psychopaths in charge don't care. I think they look at the future as this futuristic techno utopian wonderland. And really, I honestly think that most of them are so out of touch, like you said, with nature. They don't get that without these animals and these different kinds of living organisms, we don't have a shot. We don't. What do you think?
Well, it's very short-sighted nature. People also, we're highly advanced and industrialized humans. People don't really have a good perspective of that we've been dealing with industrialism for about 200 years now, and we're at peak industrialization. We're very far removed and disconnected from the idea that natural forces impact our daily lives. When it rains, we just go inside. When it's cold, we turn on the heat. We're transported in cars. We're very removed species from the natural world. That is unique in the evolution of biology, right? Species have never been so removed from the natural rhythm of the planet and its
Absolutely.
ecosystems as humans have. And if you think about this, the business elite, the professional, the cosmopolitan, who lives in a multi-$100 million skyscraper penthouse, who flies on private jets, who has access to all the greatest luxuries. These CEOs, these type of people they are the archetype. They are the epitome. They are the prototype. They are the essence of that disconnection from nature. And
Yep.
so they can't possibly be bothered or understand in any sense the damage that the systems are doing. It's the same thing with the data centers.
Yeah.
We're that problem here in the United States. Um, but it's about the build out. It's about the potential for financial gain. It's about development. It's not about displacing local peoples. It's not about endangering species. It's not about the destruction of water quality, destruction of air quality. I hate to mention his name, but it reminds me of something that Guy McPherson said.
Don't hate to mention his name. He's a major player in the movement because he brought a lot of things to our attention before anybody else did. Don't hate the messenger.
But I
Never.
remember one thing he said was every year of his, he said, everybody tells me about how, since in industrialization, everything gets better year after year. And he says, well, in my experience, water quality has gotten worse year after year. Air quality has gotten worse year after year. More and more of the Amazon is being burned away year after year. More species are going extinct faster than ever year after year. The ocean temperature is increasing year after year, and you go through all this go through all these records, and that's what's happening year after year. What are we finding out? That industrial civilization is just hammering away at all of the ecological life support systems on the planet. and it's doing so at a whopping speed. And
Whopping.
and this is happening here. And it's really sad because also the Native American people, well, I shouldn't use that vernacular, but the indigenous peoples, the more local peoples, also in the Amazon, are being horrifically displaced. But again, there's not a lot of concern for that. The concern here is that we have an opportunity to have a port that will bring in billions of dollars annually, and we can tax those containers, and we can make this into a logistics hub. And that's what this will be. This will be one of the most grand, certainly in the Western Hemisphere. But also this port will rival the ones in Los
Yeah,
Angeles.
but and look at this is the current route takes 35 days. New transit will also reduce costs, just like you say. Shanghai, Los Angeles, Panama, Manaus, Chiangkai, Manzanillo. That's the beginning. This is just the beginning of what the plans are around the world with all the new technology. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is greenwashing, but I mean, DW had a video and I clipped some of it for the opening, and they were talking about the hydrogen and how they're going to have these ships be able to plug in at the ports. And then they're also talking, now this is another thing, they're talking about all the automation. So how
Yeah.
is that going to help the Peruvian people with jobs if everything's going to be automated? What's that about?
So that was the part that I wanted to mention there. So in terms of bringing in money for people and jobs, that's a question. So obviously with the high level of automation, this port, and that was part of the big problem with Los Angeles, is that in the United States, a lot of these port authorities, these port figures, are fighting to make sure that automation doesn't take their job. Here in Peru, the Tenke port will already have a system that's highly automated, which means that a lot of those jobs will not simply exist. What jobs will exist are the managerial jobs and the executive jobs, and those jobs will exist with very good compensation. And so again, it's another class struggle that we're also seeing, is that this AI, this move to automation, is displacing peoples. And so we're having a world where increasingly these systems are being developed in a way that they extract resources for vulnerable parts of the world, and they put immense resources in increasingly fewer and fewer hands.
Now, in Peru, the farmers, they were talking about how this will help them to get their produce around the world. But no one talked about, in at least in everything I was looking at, the environmental and climate aspects of all this, where the farmers are being affected by climatic events.
Oh yeah.
Nobody's talking about that.
This is a very interesting kind of collusion of bad things. So the farmers, a lot of local farmers see this as a prosperity well for them. They have no idea what's going to happen to them. At best, what's going to happen to them is that transnationals are going to be they're going to be interested in those areas for investment because now they have the infrastructure for them.
Right.
And then you're going to see these transnational agricultural companies come in, buy up those lands from the farmers, and then they're going to be under corporate control. So of course they're not going to allow a bunch of small farmers just to reap all the benefits of having access to these logistic hubs.
It's like a horror show.
So that would be the best case scenario. But, right now, again, going back to the Age of Consequences 2007 document I continue to talk about on the show, but we've been talking about this for a very long time, that the climate would continue to destabilize the ability for agricultural yields in Central and Latin America, particularly places that are closer to the equator, because a lot of times those cash crops are closer to their temperature thresholds already. And so what we're starting to see, and what we have been seeing, is increasingly people who've been on the land, who've been able to farm on the land for generation after generation after generation, are being less able to do so. And that's because of a lot of these climatic effects that are going on. And we see this in increased immigration capacity up through to the United States. Now, what's happened is because of the policy in the United States with ICE and policy toward the border, there's been a complete reduction the border has been closed, but that's exactly what was predicted in the Age of Consequences. By 2025, 2030, the United States would effectively close its southern border. And the pressure, though, is still building. Just because we've effectively closed the border doesn't mean that the pressure, imagine if you take a hose and you put a kink in it, the water pressure is still building up, okay? So it's still piling up behind there. There's still crises, and we're still likely to see that localized farmers will not be able to keep up with the impacts of climate change. In Latin America, we see horrific hurricanes and tropical storm development. Oftentimes, in the United States, we don't follow once the hurricanes hit Mexico or hit the Yucatan or hit, in that area, we just kind of lose interest and lose track. We don't keep on following. But many of these areas are being devastated year after year by these increased cyclonic activities that are both on the Pacific and on the Atlantic side.
Absolutely. There's also I wanted to bring up the sheer scale, like you talked about, how big it is. This is not a modest dock. I mean, it's so big. And is this, what is it? Ships carrying up to 18,000 standard containers, like you said, but they pull right up to the dock, and it is actually, I got the statistics in front of my face, 4 American football fields laid end to end and wide enough to cover several traffic lanes. There is an article that I did put in the show notes, guys, that I want you to read if you didn't. It was called When the World Is Already Gone, and it's by Rad Femme Biophila, and she's in red, what is it? The whatchamacallit? Not Blue Sky, but the that I'm writing for. I don't know what's wrong with my brain. I guess I have too much on it. But she talks about in this the proposals, right? The old proposals too for the Amazonian road networks and the Trans-Andean rail links, expanded, river transport, all of it. Now, what do we do to educate people when they feel that the Western world has cheated them, and that when all of this is happening, the people, then I've read in comment sections on a DW video that I used, and the comment sections are people saying, oh yeah, the minute something good for Indigenous or South Americans, then they pull the climate or environmental or whatever. I mean, how do we counteract this when it's so, people are propagandized all over the world? How are we going to do this?
Well, it is a good concern in the sense that look at what's happened. Here we are, you're sitting comfortably in your home. I'm sitting comfortably in my apartment.
I'm freezing, but yeah.
We live very developed, highly advanced lives.
Yes.
And our civilization has already carnaged the North American continent, right? And it did so without very little. I mean, the Native Americans, we driven through ethnic cleansing and genocide in response to their protest of our destruction of the nature in the North American continent. And now people are saying, how can you criticize us after for the last 2 centuries you completely eviscerated your continent to develop your economies? Why can't we do the same? And what we're now saying is that, well, we've got to a point that humanity has developed everywhere around the world where ecologies are sophisticated. And if we eviscerate those sophisticated ecologies, we'll eviscerate our own life support systems on the planet and commit essentially a global genocide or suicide of ourselves. And this is the real conversation that we're really having. And that's why I think we have to be so frank when we have it, because that is the question. Mm-hmm. Is development worth our extinction?
Yeah, right. Oh,
And this is the question that we're being collided with. And also in the United States, it's hard to make these arguments because we would then respond and say, well, how about you develop sustainably? And then they might say, well, how about you develop sustainably?
yeah. And also,
Uh,
you know, they, the powers that be, again, this is the Substack article. They treat, you know, the Amazon. It's not a resource. It's a living world, and people have to understand this. But I just don't think it's going to happen. Like Tommyist in the chat, you know, he's like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But
the
you got to
problem
always
is,
try.
the problem is we would need a global consciousness in the system, in the sense that a real one world government, a global democracy, where there would be an executive, a federal global government that could have national reserve, or quote unquote national reserves, for all of these sensitive ecological areas. And we would really have to have a joint global development scheme where it's not just individual countries
Right.
racing off the cliff. I mean, we would have to, in a lot of ways, dissolve our sense of nationalities to deal with global ecology, because all of these issues are so trans-border, so transnational. And when we try to deal with them on national bases, we have all of these prejudices then that we have to face and deal with. So it is beyond modernity to deal, I think,
I think
conceptually
so.
with the size of the problem. And I say modernity because modernity, when I say modernity, modernity
Mm-hmm.
is a category of thought. So
Okay.
think about Enlightenmentism, empiricism, nationalisms, constitutions, liberal democracies. All of these concepts have kind of come into the way that humans have thought about themselves very recently, actually during industrialization. Notice that a lot of those things track together. Why? Of course, because in order to industrialize, you need the intellectual capabilities of empiricisms, of science, methodologies, things like that. So we haven't really developed, in my view, the sort of appropriate concepts to deal with these crises. We did, though, in our ancient human past, right?
Mm.
So before industrialization, many of what we call indigenous societies knew how to develop sustainably. That is, they knew how to develop communities within their local ecologies in a way that they didn't decimate those ecologies. And when they didn't do that, they just simply disappeared, or they had to be nomadic. We don't have that sense. We're a hyper settler society, um,
Colonialist. Yeah.
and what we do is in our settlement we expand our settlement, and then we take resources from places afar and bring them to the settlement, and we're just increasingly doing that, increasingly going further and further to get resources to bring them back to our settlements. This is a very different style of human living, even from ancient cities of the past. And this allows us to have, metropolises like New York, like Los Angeles or
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte or Atlanta, where millions of people are living in these areas. And of course, the local ecology can never support them, but they're getting these resources from all over the globe. And in order to get those resources, we're going to need what's called these megaports, these deep
Yes.
water terminals, like the one here in Peru, in order to make sure that this system
Right.
is maintained. But it is a race to the bottom. This is why I told people, and this has always been my belief. I've never had a fear of peak oil or peak resources. And people say, "Oh, we can mine asteroids." The Earth is a massive asteroid. It has an infinite amount of resources to completely destroy the biosphere and make it uninhabitable. We don't need to go off world to,
Yeah.
to, to bring back resources to destroy our world. We have just enough here. And you're right. The more we understand the different biomes, the different ecological systems as simply resources as opposed to actual living systems, the more we're likely to exploit them. And so that's the problem here. We've eviscerated the North American continent, but now kind of in our folly, we're looking at others and telling them don't do the same that we did.
Right.
But we don't have an alternative for you either. We're telling you to develop sustainably, but even that is the idea of sustainable development. There are ways to sustain up more, to develop more sustainably than the way that we do, of course. But these ideas, even the idea of sustainable development in an industrial civilization, seems to be nonsensical. It seems to be oxymoronic. What does it mean to develop sustainably in an industrial civilization? Especially with populations at the size that they are. And that's another problem that we're looking at here is that these ports, the initial plans for football stadiums, these are the initial plans. These ports go through updates, modernizations, so we can see double the capacity in the future. And I'm sure that there are blueprints making sure that if this is successful, that's exactly what happens.
But you see though that it's like familiar. It is where the development, it's always framed as this individual said, it's always development, but it does not help the local people. Does not help. The ecological costs and local. They're local and permanent. There's no plan to say, okay, well, there was. I mean, in one of the videos they said, well, they're going to build some kind of wildlife rehab bullshit. Like wildlife rehab bullshit, which is really what it is. Why do they have to rehab wildlife in the first place? Because we are destroying it. We are taking it away. It really, it's killing me. I mean, it's really hard to be watching this. And I don't want to always take this defeatist or doomist attitude. But when you consume and you learn and you read and you understand the big picture, it's not easy to say, well, zippity doo dah, we're going to fucking find a way. I mean, it's hard.
No, I completely understand, and I'm there with you. And you look at the lack of progress that's being made already on climate change. You look at the lack of progress that's being made on the protection of a lot of environment, and it does become really depressing. And it has been depressing for some time. But Sandy, I think that's been our role here. We've known for over a decade, in my case, that the continued ecological destruction of the planet would happen in the name of profit. And it's not profit for the many, it's profit for the few. But nonetheless, this is to move forward. And as long as people, poor people have hope that these projects will give them money, they will approve of them. And they'll hope, and like I say, the best situation is that transnational companies will come in, buy up, the land, buy up the companies, and take over that way. But that's what the leaders in these governments often see as ways of increasing their own reputation, their own global status, is if we can host these big mega projects and have international leaders come in and make international deals. And look how well this is done for the Chinese.
Oh, yeah.
The Chinese have done fantastically well doing these projects around the world. Part of their, like you say, Belt Road Initiative has been wildly successful. And it doesn't like...
But it's not something to blame the country for. I mean, they are just taking part in what all countries do. It's every country, even the poorest countries. There's some responsibility here. China is just Well, in a sense, the West created China because of outsourcing and purchasing all the cheap shit and the consumerism on steroids. We created this monster in the West. We did. And now
Yeah.
the monster is taking over and controlling everything. And it's not a monster on the people level at all. It's never the people. It's the global government psychopaths.
And I would ask people, go and look at time-lapse satellite videos of China and look at how these places that were villages, and you could hardly see them from space. They were just mostly forested areas, and they just get wiped out and turn into these megaplexes of just sprawl every direction, and it's incredible.
I have a question for you, actually. So I've been watching these people, especially like these Australian gals, these young gals. They go, "Oh, my apartment in China," and they live in, I think it's Xinjiang. And at night, the buildings are lit up with, they said, 1,000,000 lights and light shows. And I'm like, okay, but what is actually powering all that, Antonio? All this pomp and circumstance, the light shows and all this stuff to what? Numb the people?
Well, it is, and that's why it's almost like a cyberpunk reality, right? Because China, of course, that requires immense energy. And of course, the Chinese have a reservoir of coal, fire power plants, oil, gas. They also have a suite of renewable options too, solar, nuclear, and wind. So they do have a real robust energy mix in China. But nonetheless, the environmental damages of industrialization in China have been immense. And now they're trying to move, just as we did, just as Europe did, all of the industrialization, that heavy, intense industrialization out out of China, and mainly to places like Africa, mainly places like Indonesia, and mainly South America. They see these are the future places for these heavy industries. And because the Chinese now, many of them live lives that are on par with our own, or even better. There's over 300 million Chinese that live middle to upper middle class lives now. That's almost the whole of the American population. And as those people live increasingly middle class lives, they actually are fighting for, air rights, environmental rights. When the same thing happened in the United States, as the U.S. population reached more middle classness, as more people became upper middle class, what happened? By the 1970s, by the 1960s, we're passing the EPA, we're passing the Clean Water Act, passing the Clean Air Act, and all of these environmental laws and regulations. Well, the same thing is happening in China. As China is industrializing, as they're developing, people are becoming increasingly wealthy. They want clean air, they want clean water. And so the way that the government has to respond to that is because, again, it's hard to develop sustainably. So you simply have to offshore those heavy industries to poor countries. And you do so lowering them and tell them, well, look at what those industries did for us. It might be dirty and bad in the short term, but then you'll have megaplexes, and look how bright our cities are, and look how happy our people are when we put on these futuristic dystopian night shows every night to show you how developed we are. But what's happened in China is a complete evisceration of its natural ecology. Devastating from shoreline, and remember, China, half of China is very arid, very desert-like, and the other half is very, very forested, and that's where the human population is. The vast majority of Chinese live in the Far East, and because they do so, they completely eviscerate with these mega complex cities.
Absolutely. They're
They're
gigantic. I mean, I could put a link. I'll put a link in the show notes to this video, this one particular video of these gals extolling the virtues of living in China for, I think it's $300 American a month. And, there's a lot of expats from Australia and all these people making these videos. And I can't help but feel that they're propaganda videos.
What's amazing to see is that the population in China has not actually increased that much over the last 30 years. But the amount of space that individuals need now, because they're middle class, is so much more. When you move the population from being rural and mostly a peasant class, riding bikes, things like that, and you put them in a car is 10 times the size of a human being. So you have one car per human being, and you have 10 million human beings. And this is the problem. And then you had a human being who is living in a 4-room, not 4-bedroom, a 4-room house, with a bedroom, a kitchen, a bathroom, and living space. And now you have that same people living in 3 bedrooms, living room, car garage. And so the amount of space that the same amount of people need now that they're middle class is so much more. And not just, of course, the space, but also the resources. And so that's been a huge question is not just populations, but it's also their are they affluent? Yeah. Affluent populations demand much more resources than non-affluent populations. And so as populations become more affluent, they'll demand more physical space, literally more physical space.
Yeah,
and it's not just you. Think about how many people can walk on a 10-foot wide sidewalk that's like a mile long. Think about how many people you can cram on that sidewalk compared to how many cars you can.
Right.
Okay, that is an immense difference. I mean, look at it when you're in the streets of New York. Look how many people can walk on the sidewalk compared to how many people can drive their car on the streets, and the streets are much bigger. So when you try to put people in these spaces, you explode the demand for space that they need. And that's why we see these Chinese cities explode inside. Just explode inside.
The buildings are so tall, they're frightening, actually. It's frightening. But then I think about New York City, too, and the race to the tallest, Remember when the orange one said that after 9/11?
That's another thing.
Yeah.
We only have, in terms of New York, Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago are only 3 cities that are kind of like that. New York is a moderate-sized city in these mega Chinese cities. I mean, these cities, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Shanghai, Shenzhen, these cities are 9-10 million people, and there's over 40 different huge cities this size in China. Think about that, 40 New Yorks.
No, I can't think about it. It's overwhelming. It's like, I just boom. It's overwhelming.
And people really don't have a perspective of size, but you can get a place where you have, in the United States, I think there might be maybe 10 cities that have 1 million population. That's the size of Charlotte.
Poppy says Houston is the very definition of
Houston's number 4.
Yeah,
Houston's number 4, and I left out Houston in particular, and I'm glad someone mentioned Houston because Houston is the 4th largest city in the United States behind Chicago. The reason why I left out Houston is because it's an entirely different type of city than New York, Chicago, or even Los Angeles. Houston is the worst type of city. Houston is the car center, urban sprawl, flat land catastrophe. That shows that when you have a car, a big population and flat land, you'll get Houston.
Well, what's interesting, I think about this too, when the 15-minute city thing came up. And possibly in China, these are 15-minute cities because they're so condensed and there's so many people in such a small amount of area. But yet the people in the West are the first people to, make it conspiracy theories and make it into, they want to control us.
That's actually another interesting thing about these Chinese cities is that technically that's why I compared them to more like New York and Los Angeles because they're actually very dense. They're just mega cities because of their population sizes are incredible, but they're actually very dense cities. These are cities where people do not have to, like in Atlanta, like in DC, like in Houston, have to drive hours back and forth to work and things like that. Sometimes they do, especially the more middle professional office class, especially, as people are moving out of the countryside and into the city. But once they do, the way that Chinese cities are set up is the whole idea of neighborhoods is very different in the United States. In the United States, we have what's called R1 residential housing, where you just build out in the countryside and there's just complete mazes, rows and rows and rows of just single family detached homes,
like Florida.
No stores, no whatever. That's not how the Chinese develop. That's you will find very little single family detached homes just sprawling out across the countryside endlessly. That's not how they develop. So they develop more like Los Angeles or more like Chicago, more like New York. And the areas are hyper dense, but even with that hyper densification, these are still very, very large cities. They would be look at compare the city space of Houston to New York. Okay, Houston is mega large, even though it has like a fourth of the population of New York. I think Houston has like 5 million. Maybe it's like 6 million people in Houston. But New York, Manhattan has 9 million. And then the metropolitan area of New York is 22 million.
Absolutely. It's huge. I used to live there.
The population is anywhere between 2 to 4 times that of Houston. And yet it requires so much less space because of its dense built environment. Whereas Houston is just this sprawling, low-level density urban just nightmare of roads and houses and shopping districts and malls and parking lots.
That's the American way. Malls and shopping and parking and
they're McDonald's signs and Bojangles.
I kind of want to segue a little bit if you're ready. I want to segue a little bit, if you don't mind, because I think we've done really well on this topic. And at least we're not talking, we haven't come to any kind of, what can we do to change it? But we've talked about it. Now, I want to talk about Brazil now, because Brazil will be affected. We saw what happened at the COP and the building, the insane building that they did just for that. The fact that the fossil fuel industry pretty much owns it, took it over, the propaganda. But their oil production has hit a record high, 4.3 million barrels a day. And they have broken it. Historic milestones. And I just want to hear what you have to say, since in October they did that. What you have to say about, because they're boosting the exports. And this is like, Lula was supposed to be a progressive. We're seeing totally that's not happening. And they're trying to reinforce themselves as this, energy powerhouse. So what is that? What is that now? How does that segue into Peru and, Brazil? The real destruction of the rainforest.
Well, of course, anytime that you have a logistics hub, it's going to attract other logistics hubs because that's how it becomes a network. And certainly the Brazilians see this as a way to move around more energy. And they're exactly right. I mean, you start building these transportation hubs, these logistics hubs, and they're right. They're going to be able to ship this stuff easier. And the Brazilians, like I say, this is where the heavy industry is going now. It is going to Latin America, it's going to Africa, it's going to Indonesia. It's being offshored. And there are plenty of resources, certainly in Brazil, where they're going to have a lot of gas resources, and they're going to also have a lot of shale gas resources. And they're going to want to develop those regardless of who the regime is. And the second they put someone in who says we're not going to develop these energies, even though there's been quite lucrative for the country, that person is going to get kicked out. So this is going to attract more foreign investment. More foreign investment is going to attract more development. More development will mean more infrastructure. More infrastructure will attract more foreign development and investment. And so I think that what we're going to see is a sort of domino effect when it comes to the development of these resources. And we've already seen that. The Brazilians have, in their policies agriculturally with the Amazon, have desolated large parts of the Amazon for sugarcane. And so we already see they're willing to use the Amazon as resources, its land. So certainly going and developing oil resources isn't that far put, nor developing network hubs in link with what's happening in Peru. And I think that's what's going to happen. My biggest fear is that what we'll start doing is starting to see a lot of these Amazonian rivers be expanded and turned into port rivers. And we could actually see vessels going through the Amazon. And that would be a mega fear. But with the sort of technologies that are being deployed today, with the sort of interests that are localizing in the area, I wouldn't be surprised that these things start happening. Certainly so. And even if not, what we're going to see is extraction processes done in the Amazon at large scale.
Okay, thank you. Now I think we're going to move over to what everybody's talking about in the chat.
And let me also say
ahead.
this too, and this is another thing that we've always warned about, is that the problem with transitioning the world to renewables is that the demand for energy is accelerating ultra fast. And because demand of energy is accelerating ultra fast, renewables, yes, they're a cheap option, but also oil and gas is a very lucrative option. And so we're going to continue to see that the pressure to have a robust energy mix will still be there. So yes, in the future, what we'll see is that, people may not like this, but that's part of the greenwashing, is that we're going to be using solar and wind to power a lot of these automated systems to transport oil and gas.
Isn't that something? Yeah, boy. All right. The chat is hopping, and I really do want to highlight something that Global is saying. The talk is outrage-based. Could we tone down the emotions and have acceptance of our plight? The thing is, yeah, of course it's outrage-based in a way, but it's also reality-based. It's also what's happening in the world. We have totally understood that collapse acceptance is a thing to work on. Collapse and then, collapse acceptance. But the whole thing is there's a lot of people, Global, that don't understand the big picture. And
that's another thing. We're highly Western. Again, we're in a very comfortable situation, so we can kind of get to armchair ourselves and just kind of fall into the therapy mode. But for most of the world, I mean, this is really going on, and people don't have a sense of the crises. And I think it's important, again, this is the difference between telling people not to do things that we've already done. The damage has already been done here, right? The damage is exploding elsewhere in the world. And it's important to talk about that, because if we don't, I feel like we're going to lose our fight.
Yeah. Hello, Ernie. As long as I get my piece of the pie, who cares? Yeah, it's kind of like that in a simplistic way. I mean, but we've kind of seen this time ever since we've stood upright. Maybe not the Neanderthals so much, but I mean, and maybe not the indigenous cultures, but certainly since industrialization, you know. And Foggy has just said something here, but why do we have to accept it? My heart is broken, then shattered into a million pieces, but I will never accept it. Well, the thing about collapse acceptance is once you do accept that you have absolutely no control over the big picture, it does feel a bit better. We've done many shows about this, but it's not easy. And that's where the outrage comes in. And when you consume, it's not that so much the social media I consume, it's research. You know, it's the research, it's all of the things to understand the bigger picture. And of course,
And why can't people roar against that good night? I think that people should have go down swinging if they so choose. And I think part of that is recognizing outrage in the moment is appropriate. There are moments where I find peace and acceptance of what's happening. But think about what's happening with ICE. Should I find peace and acceptance with what's happening with that?
no.
We don't have to find peace and acceptance just because we're in the minority, just because we're on the losing side. I think about Holocaust survivors. I think about people who are dealing with the Nazi regime when they were in the minority, when they had to be running house to house, living underground. Do you stop the fight? Do you just accept that this is the way that the world is? Or do you continue to resist them every step of the way? And I think that's what we have to do. I think we have to call out the oil companies. I think we have to call out the corrupt politicians. I think we have to continue to record the damage that they're doing. I think we have to continue to call out the cognitive dissonance of not only them, but ourselves. I think we have to think about why our lifestyles are contributing to the destruction of our planet and what that really means. And the question that I've already asked, is it worth it?
It has to be worth it. And like I always say on a daily or on a local level, you know, we may not have the ability to handle the big picture, but we sure do where we are. And we sure can do something to make wherever we live. So the people in Peru who are talking out against what they're seeing is wrong, people in Brazil, I mean, we don't want them to stop. But the outrage is what fuels activism and work to get out there to do just what you said. There's no quitting. There's no quitting for me. And even when I'm at my most disabled, which is a lot lately, and that's something else, you know, but I still am trying. I'm still working. But I've accepted a lot more than I have wanted to. And that's where the acceptance comes in, because I think it then makes it easier to work on these issues or try to at least enlighten people. I'm not a maybe what
And
they
you
call
know
it.
what? Look at
What?
this.
Go ahead.
And I tell these people, there's been legislation in the United States going back to these data centers. There's been legislation to try to make sure that states can't regulate AI, can't regulate these data centers. And look at what Outrage
Crazy.
has done.
Yeah.
Outrage has stopped these senators from actually putting in these laws that would prevent states from regulating data centers. So outrage is very important. In fact, you know what? We need to be outraged. There's a good show that said well, I can't remember what it was about. It said something about the tube. Everything they say on the tube is a lie, and I'm not going to take it anymore. And he yells outside, and everybody starts yelling. Sandy, I know you know what show I'm talking
All right.
about.
Yes. Say it again now. Let's go over this again.
It's an older guy, and he's
Yes.
doing this network. Is the network? That's what it's called, right?
Oh, the network.
Yeah. And at one part, he yells and says, "Well, I'm not going to take it anymore."
Right.
And he's mad. Yeah.
Not
And he does
gonna
that
take it
whole.
anymore.
Yeah.
Right. I
He does
feel
that whole.
like I want to be like that.
Well, I think that that's what we need. That's the sort of energy we need to be outraged, because outrage is what moves people. But what we need in our outrage is called righteous indignation, right? We need to be righteous about our outrage. We should be outraged that one of the jewels of our planet is being metamorphosed into a megaport. We should be outraged that the Amazon is being eviscerated. We should be outraged that we aren't taking more concern and more action to protect our planet. And even if, our civilization is in a lot of trouble, why can't we do all that we can to make sure the species that will be left after us aren't living in the worst of situations possible? It is our responsibility, while we are conscious, while we are able, to do everything that we can to expose the system,
Yep.
to mitigate its impacts, and to make sure that the rich and powerful are held accountable for what they do. And for us also to think about in our own lives how we contribute to the system. And again, if that contribution is worth it.
Well, it has to be worth it. Even if, like I always say, even if you may not effectuate the big picture, those people, I just saw people out there, uh, I think that were just, they're protesting locally. Locally, they're risking getting beat up. Gravalia, the new congressperson from, I think it's Arizona, that
Arizona.
wasn't, yeah, she wasn't, she got tear gassed because she was at an ICE protest just trying to check on her own constituents, and she got tear gassed. But if it weren't for people like that, if it weren't for the people that protested against Vietnam, if it weren't, and I was one of them in 7th grade, if there, and I went to protest in DC against Iraq twice. If there weren't people like that, then these issues would go away. But we are so propagandized around the world. In the United States now, the billionaires own pretty much all the media.
Mm-hmm.
So the things may be insurmountable, but and then Scott says too much outrage. That's right. There has to be a measure, and that's why I always put in, or I talk about the Good Grief Network and all the people that are doing the work also of and bring people
And I'll tell
on.
people from my own personal life, since I'm Jewish, every Shabbat, which is Friday night and all of Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
I unplug from the world. So I am definitely not outraged Friday through Saturday. That is the one time, and some people might need more, but that's the one time a week that
Right.
I choose to completely unplug from the chaos of the world. So you're absolutely right. If you're in a state of outrage all the time, you need to seek help.
Yeah.
But when the outrageous happens, be outraged.
Right. And there is help. And you know what? The Climate Crisis Club on Saturdays, which is an X space. There's my channel, our channel, not me, us, because there's a team here. And there's a lot of help out there. There is a lot of in this, even in, do you know that eco counseling is becoming a thing? A friend goes to a climate eco counselor. They're starting to be trained. I know you're tired. I see it, but they're starting to be trained in this, and yeah, Climate Crisis Club is right here. And you said, Alex, you had said a lot of doomers here. Well, yeah, that's if you want to label it that way. I mean, the doomosphere, it's all funny and fun and games, but it's really not. I mean, it's not. But, well, let's see. Yes, you need to take breaks. Absolutely. You can't be enraged all the time. And humans created this economic and governmental system. We can create a better one. And you want to keep some of that in your mind, that and start with your local, where you live. Remember when you did the climate plan for your university, Antonio?
Yeah.
That was making an effort. to make a better place, because universities are like little towns.
And I'm taking those same skills to the synagogue, and making sure that at the synagogue, because it's a campus, it's not just one small building, but to make sure that we are carbon neutral when it comes to our energy as well. And of course, we have robust recycling, which I understand that recycling is mostly a gimmick. But these are things that we can think about, and the more we know, the more we can make them less gimmicky. And
Yeah.
hopefully, there's smart people out there where we can actually make sense of that. But yeah, it's important to do what you can where you can.
Absolutely. And Scott had put in something that I've been telling my friends and I'm trying to do. Unplug, because it's bad every day. It gets worse every day. Now we have a new thing that came out, the strategic plan, where we are going to be we're going to unalign ourselves with every democracy on the planet in the United States, it seems. I mean, that's enough to be outraged and terrified of. But I mean, but you have to. And I tell my friends that. And unfortunately, I love all of you. So many people send me so much every day through all of the messaging apps that if I looked at it all, I would do nothing all day but this. And I do enough of it. So I am working on unplugging like you have. Unplugging from X has been great. I'm on it because of the Climate Crisis Club, and I am trying. It's hard sometimes. It is hard. It's not easy because we are addicted to doom scrolling. I just did a video called Doom Scrolling. I mean, it can be a real negative thing, and I've realized it. So in my own life, like you have your Saturdays, I have my day with either to do projects for others, like I'm helping Sam do his Collapse Chronicles interviews all over again for Substack and make them visually appealing videos, or, the topics are horrible. He's interviewed everybody. That's not easy to listen to them. And, or my cats, my home, or taking a walk out there, just taking a walk out. It's cold, but there's a lot of things you can do. And that's why we want to be supportive here. It's not just about outrage. It really isn't. But I felt the need to have to talk about this stuff today because, well, it's important to me, and I knew that you were going to be with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we're almost an hour and 15 minutes. So, Tommy, in theory, it's true about doing things, but the time is dwindling. But it doesn't matter. You have to look at it in a different way. Yeah, maybe the time is dwindling, but there's no reason to ever stop. Ever stop if you are so inclined to be an activist or whatever you do. I don't know how much good it will do, but I'm enjoying learning, homesteading, sustainable living, and studying nature. Beautiful. So am I. I've been doing it, and I love it. I do love it. There's just so many wonderful things. The people that follow, all of you are so amazing. You're just so amazing. And what did Dale say? You don't have to scroll unless you're in the climate crisis chat group where you have it and you want to have a conversation, which is great. I mean, there's a lot. Hi, Bella. It's good to see you here. But let's see, what else did I have? We've had some. Now listen, Sean, you don't have to feel sorry for me. I take it in, but I'm the messenger and I'm the elder of this community. I think I'm one of the elders. And so I feel like it's a pleasure and a role that I have undertaken. Many times I want to quit. Many times I want to say, forget it. I'm not doing this. I'm sick of it. I can't afford it, which is a big thing because the things I use, but I just can't. All right, let's see. Here's one. One Living World. Who is the market for all these products? Certainly not poor people. Go ahead, Tony.
It's the middle class in America, the middle class in China, the middle class in Europe. That's who these products are for.
So when they say that middle class is dead, it really isn't.
I mean, we're about to celebrate Christmas. You tell me. I think a bunch of people are about to run out and buy a bunch of cheap products.
True. Just you said that. Okay, I was in Lowe's. I stopped to buy batteries because I like to have, some backup stuff, and I've never seen this before. The most gigantic Christmas ornaments, plug-in, just gigantic, garish and gauche things that are over $100, $200 for this. Who the hell is buying this shit, and is it all on credit? I was I was shocked, actually, because I haven't gone in there in a long time. Here's another one. Consumerism enabled by credit card debt. I have been there. I am guilty. I still have certain problems because sometimes it makes you have to make the ends meet. So yeah, I wouldn't be able to talk about the things that I talk about sometimes if I was not guilty of them and lived through them. All right. You would not believe the hoarding you find at estate sales, especially feckin' Christmas shite. Yeah, right. I wouldn't even put up any anyway because everything I have is old, but I also have 7 cats. So it's like, yeah, the Christmas displays are getting ridiculous. I know we're going from the natural world to Christmas displays, but this really segues right into what we're talking about. Yep. Oh. Okay. Let me see. We got a super chat. And Foggy, thank you so much. What a sweetheart. Every little thing helps me to do this channel. My story blocks is coming up where I get my videos, which are copyright free, a lot of pieces, and a lot of story blocks is still graphic artists, creators, and not AI. Although they unfortunately have an AI where you can use the tools, which I don't. But that's coming up, all this stuff just to run this channel. But I do enjoy it. So, Dog Dude, I sought out eco counseling and found it after Michael C. passed. I was rather depressed over that for like 3 months, and it helped. That's beautiful to hear. And you sought it out. And when people seek me out, there are people that have I'm not a therapist. I have degrees. I have worked with people. But when I appreciate when somebody seeks me out for help, and I have people that have, and I try to find them what they need, as I did in HR, or I listen. And it's happening right now with someone. And you know what? I guess being the elder in this community does have its place. What about you? Besides, well, you already said what you do, Tony. So, yeah. Okay, we have somebody that's different who has your boycotts are not actually going out and building alternative systems. Okay. Who's talking about boycotts talk about that. Do you think boycotting is a something that is viable, Tony?
I think sometimes it depends on what the actual campaign is. I mean, we didn't mention boycotts here, so I'm not sure what that would be.
Okay. I don't know. It's a person I've never seen who is definitely joining the chat. I am certainly not going to ban them. They just have a different, and they're not trolling. They're just having a different.
I just don't know. I just don't know what that's in relationship in terms of what we're talking about.
This person is pissing off, like this person said the trucks and ships are still running just fine. I mean, okay, I think this person just has a worldview that has bought into.
You can boycott all products. I don't know if that's going to work. I would say that would be an unsuccessful.
Right.
Boycott.
Well, thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Dwayne. Oh my gosh. We love Dwayne. That's amazing. And that does help the kitties. It does help the channel. Oh, and the birds. Oh my gosh. I've got the hungriest birds on the planet. Well, not really, but I feed birds and they see me every day, Tony. And I go out there and I fill the bird feeders. They watch me from the trees and I now have, I don't know if I have hundreds, but I have tens of birds, scores of birds. The blue ones, the red ones, the gray ones. They see me and they hear me. I go, come on, birdies. I must be crazy, but those are the things I do. And I have to afford bird seed now because besides cat food, they're eating it. And it's very cold out, but they're here. So I want to ask you one question. Your relationship with the natural world, Tony, is incredible. Tell us about what you do in your time, and then we're going to have 10 more minutes and we're going to go, because I know you're a hiker. Tell us a little bit about that and how other people could benefit from your experience that way.
Yeah, I like to go hiking to decompress. It's a really good way, not just hiking, but backpacking. That's when you're actually out in the woods for several days at a time, maybe up to a week or something of that nature. And I just like to go with the ebbs and flows of nature because you really get to experience the biological rhythm of ecology. And you're disconnected from your phone and from TVs and from all of the nonsense that, dominates our everyday life and in the headlines. And you just kind of get the focus on the wind blowing between the trees, the squirrels, the deer, whatever other wildlife is out there, and starting little campfires, and it really takes you back to a pre-industrial time where things were a lot more simple, even if not completely, at least in a lot of respects. Laying in your tent. It's a form of shelter, but you're very still much outside. Being under certified night skies, dark skies, where you see the clouds in the Milky Way. It's a very different experience than, living in the suburbs or living in a city.
And I'm blessed to have that here. I mean, on my trail cam, yes, it's a trail cam. But I played for everybody. I've shared it. Bobcat, I got a bobcat, big one. Bear, opossum, raccoons, rabbits, birds, and my neighbor's cats. But I mean, I am so fortunate and blessed to be where I am. Yeah, it's very red. People are whatever they are, but it doesn't matter to me. Nobody discusses it when you're talking about the farmers markets or whatever is here. But I feel that way every day. I look outside and I feel just a spiritual blessing to be here. And you have that spiritual blessing to be able to hike. And there's a lot of people in the world that don't have that ability. More people in the world that don't than we do. And I guess our aim in a way is for other people in other countries to be able to, and it would be nice if we could, solve the war problem. I mean, first and foremost, also, there's just a lot of things to take in. There are a lot of amazing things, but it's very hard when humanity just also likes to make a war. And we showed this before, so thank you. It is working. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's the Taoist way. Just go with the flow. That's the Taoist way. Dwayne, that's a beautiful, beautiful gesture. Well, we are almost an hour and a half. So, Tony, would you like to bring this all together from where we started to lifting everybody up? So we're not leaving on a Sunday with outrage. So maybe we're leaving with we feel a little better. And hello, Midi Doctors. You missed the whole thing, but it's nice to see you here from the UK. And also a Majority Report moderator. So, hey.
Oh, hey.
Yep.
Thank you again, everyone, for coming in. And again, it's so important that we understand what's happening around the world with these different mega projects, the impact they have on the environment and the long-term impacts that they'll have on either the ocean or the atmosphere in the fight against climate change or for ecological protection. What's happening in Peru, it is a crisis, it is a disaster, and it is very indicative of what's unfortunately happening in many places in the world. But even still, I think that
Yep.
we can have costs to come together, and I think we do have costs to come together. We have costs to continue to do the local fight where we are. We have the ability to connect with people around the world in their local fights. That's what me and Aunt Sandy, that's what the Environmental Coffee House is about. It's supposed to be about a coffee house is that third place where people meet to talk about ideas. And this is the Environmental Coffee House where different peoples from around the country come and around the world come to talk about these ideas. And if we're able to do that, that's a lot of hope in of itself. That there are conscious-minded people in New York, North Carolina, and the UK, wherever else they might be.
Canada?
In Canada, and we come here to talk about these issues that are very pressing. And take a break, take peace, but also find your outrage. So find your peace, find your outrage. That's my message. And keep the fight going and stick it to the bastards.
All right, we're going to flush the bastards. Yeah. Stick it to the bastards, the Environmental Coffee House flush of the day. We'll stick it to the bastards, and there certainly is no shortage of them, unfortunately. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. I am thrilled that you all came this morning. And Tony, thank you so much. Get some rest. I know you were up late. And I love you all. I love you all. And I'm going to end with a very nice looking video to take you out. Okay? So peace out. And my next show will not be live on Tuesday. If I have chance, I'm going to make videos on Tuesdays. Love you.